Hi, my name is Lauren Luttrell, and this is the beginning of my story for how I came up with this transcending tree diagram and all the players that come along with it, as well as the mechanism for uh, being able to transcend on your own. And I have referenced this in earlier consciousness episodes, and so I feel this is the time to begin. And I want to begin with explaining how I came across transcendence, not knowing what it was at all, or even that it was a thing. And it's all because I was a survivor of abuse when I was young. And there was sexual abuse from a neighbor. And I can't remember 2 years between the ages of 6 and 8. And uh, I feel that is part of the reason why I grew up without an identity. And I didn't even know I was a victim or somebody that didn't have an identity, because to me, I learned what my society was doing and became a mirror image of it, and almost a chameleon. For whatever situation I was in, I could get others to like me because I wanted to fit in so bad. But I always felt different and separate from them, and I knew why. Um, so when I was around 8, I had made a comment to one of my nannies that I was hurting in a place that was not good. And she asked why, so I explained how I was in a pool with the next door neighbor, and his fingers went up me, and it was searing pain, but I couldn't remember anything after that. And that's what started the whole incident, or that's the first kind of memory I have of my childhood, because the next memory I have is me talking, and I knew it was a state detective or a state interviewer or whatever, because it was a glass mirrored room. It was all white, but for the glass mirror, and there was a table, and I had to point out where it was touched and what happened, and I had to use dolls to explain everything. But I remember feeling the energy from the interviewer, and as soon as I had mentioned the bad stuff, everything changed in the room. The atmosphere in the room just changed, and I couldn't remember anything further other than that one episode of being in the pool with him. And at the end of the whole interview with the state, they were like, "Why don't you pick out, a little stuffed animal to remember us by?" And I was like, "No, I'm not gonna. Why would I want to do that? You just made me use one of your animals to explain something that made this lady furious. Nobody told me, as like a little lady that or a young girl, that grown men don't become friends with young girls just for fun." But he was like my first love, and I hate to say it now because I know how twisted and weird that is, but um, he would talk to me next to my my fence that like divided our houses, and I grew up with a nanny and a bunch of brothers and sisters, so there wasn't a lot of supervision, and he gave me attention, and he was my best friend, and I loved him, and I felt sorry for him, or well, for I felt that I had done something wrong by saying to somebody that I was hurt by him. And it wasn't until years later that I really understood what it all meant. And after I had to talk to the state lady or detective or whatever, I went to see a therapist, and my dad was in the room. And the therapist asked me to write or draw what I felt like when I was with him, with the neighbor, the abuser. So I drew rainbows and unicorns and like either a pot of gold or a leprechaun at the end of the rainbow. And it really upset the therapist, and the therapist turned to my dad and told him that I didn't know what I was thinking. And it made me furious because all I wanted to do was tell the neighbor I was sorry. Because it meant whatever I had done meant we couldn't be together. And I loved him. And now this lady was telling me that I didn't know what I was thinking. And that was the end of the therapy session. And the fury, the emotion involved really set the stage for me moving forward, being disconnected from society. The very next experience I had was with a counselor, because we had moved to a new place and a new school, and they had told our school about it, and so we had to see a counselor. And the counselor, my sister was with me in this session, because towards the end, my sister started coming over, and he was giving her more attention than he was giving me, and I didn't like it because I was jealous. And again, I was like 8 at this time, and she was 2 years older, so she kind of had a better idea about what was right and what was wrong. But so the counselor told us to write how we felt when we were with him. And I remember this voice in my head saying, "Uh-oh, we've heard that before." And I knew I couldn't draw the rainbows, and I couldn't draw the leprechauns or the pot of gold and the unicorn. So I looked over at what my sister was drawing, and she was drawing a house like either on fire, and there was like smoke or something, and it was either in hell or on fire. And so I was looking, and the counselor caught me, and the counselor was like, uh, like, what do you do? Don't cheat. Don't copy what your sister's doing. And I told him, no, I'm not copying. I'm just drawing a house because you told us to write how we feel when we're with him. And I remember the voice in my head saying, "Oh, I think he got us." And then responding, "It's okay. We'll make it different. We'll make it slightly different." And so I drew a house, and I didn't draw any fire, and I didn't draw any smoke. And the counselor goes, "Oh, time's up." And we turned in our pictures, and he holds up my sister's, and he's like, "We have a nice house on fire in hell, and a slightly shittier version of the same thing. Looks like your sister wins and you don't." And so my sister was able to continue counseling, and I was not. And that is the end of my counseling therapy shenanigans for whatever happened to me between the blackout years. I call them the blackout years, 6 to 8. The other thing about my sister was she was severely bipolar, but they didn't know it until she had come back from college, and there was an episode I can get into later. But because I was the sibling born right under her, I was the problem or I was the reason of all of her problems. And she made it known to me, and she was physical about it. And um, I was very stunted in my growth, thinking about it. I mean, they always blamed it on me being premature, but it had probably something to do with the sexual abuse. And so I couldn't compete when she would be physical with me. And I mean, I remember this one time where we were trying to sell Girl Scout cookies, and I wanted to go to this house, and my sister said, "No, we can't go. Our nanny said we had to stop here." And I said, "I want to go anyways." And she grabbed my arm and she dug her nails into me, and so I took a pencil and stabbed it in her arm, and she ran off back to house, and I went and tried to get Girl Scout cookies from the neighbor, and turns out they weren't home, so that was not a good use of pencil stabbing. And so when by the time I got home, I don't know what my sister had told the nanny, but I was being blamed for like poisoning her with iron or something. She was fine, but I was just made the enemy of everything that went wrong in her life. And she was physical, and again, she wasn't medicated until an incident where she ended up throwing me down the stairs and stomping on my head into the floor. During that time, though, I remember there was this night where, and the time I'm talking about, it was when I was around 8. Again, 6 through 8, I don't remember anything, but I have like a sense. Sometimes there's a black cloud, and sometimes I hit up against it, and a memory will shake out. But I don't try very hard because I don't think I want to remember it all. But regardless, I do remember this one time where I just had an urge to get out of my bed and go to the window in my room, which looked out onto the cul-de-sac, and I saw this white ghost lady that was about my age, about 30, walking away. And I mean, I could feel her linen, and I looked it up recently. She was wearing an 1800 style nightgown with ruffles on the sleeves, and her arms were stiff against her body, and she had a ruffle on the bottom of her nightgown that I could feel hitting or fluttering against my ankles, and she was barefoot, and I could feel the asphalt as she walked down. And she had given me a light baton, and I didn't know why. And as soon as she had given me the light baton, that's when I woke up, and I ran to the window, and she was just walking down the center in the middle of the night, this glowing ghost white lady. And I remember pleading, like, why would you give me this? What does it mean? And her arms were stiff, which hinted to me that she knew I was asking, but she wouldn't answer. And I know now why that was, and it had to do with my identity leaving. But I will stop here because the free time is almost out, and that was the first vision or supernatural experience I had, which is tied in with this story. Turns out that the second voice in my head with the counselor and the therapist was Chaos, and she is wild and crazy. But I will leave that for now, and have a great day.